All right, this is going to be hard to say because I know I can be easily misunderstood, but I have to say this because this is very important, so I'm going to go right to the title. Your identity is yours. I celebrate each individual's right to have their own identity and to practice their life in accordance with their beliefs, as long as their beliefs don't intrude on someone else's rights. Someone else's right to practice their life how they wish also defends my right to live my life the way I see fit and identify as I please. So the disclaimer is, in defending my right to choice, I defend someone else's right to choice, even if it's completely different than mine. And I don't have the right to judge, but we are welcome to our opinions, especially in areas where someone else's lifestyle impacts ours. And it's not fair or right to call people haters or phobics or whatever terms when they have different opinions. I think two things people easily confuse are seeking rights versus seeking validations. As soon as I win the argument to choose as I please, I defend someone else's argument to choose as they please, even if they have a different opinion. Essentially, the argument I'm winning is it is okay to have a different opinion. That's about rights. But as soon as I take different opinions and I don't allow them or I call them hating, then that's not about everyone's rights. That's about what I think is right. So the conversation is no longer about rights. It's about validation. Validation is dangerous because the need for validation becomes the enemy of rights. The need for validation is where we go from asking me to respect your choice to asking me to agree with your choice, so much so that I can't have an opinion that doesn't complement your choice. Even infringing on my rights so much that I can't raise my family in accordance with my beliefs if it doesn't complement your choice. And if I have an opinion about something that impacts my family that doesn't complement your choice, it's considered hate. So what do you end up with when rights get confused with validations? You get a whole bunch of people checked into hotel silence. So all those nice opinions you thought you had a right to that weren't hating and weren't judgmental, nope, that was hating. You believe in biological sex? You're a hater, transphobic. You believe that children should not be able to have sex changes? You're a hater, transphobic. You think biological boys and biological girls should not compete against each other in combat sports? You're a hater, transphobic. And people may not see this, but the overall impact that it has on people who are just trying to live their lives, the same way you said you was trying to live your life with freedom, it becomes a bully situation. That's how people feel. Bully. Like, I can't have my own thoughts because I got to think like you. And also, I can't have an opinion about how societal changes come down the pipe because you don't agree. So then essentially now, for the sake of not offending transgender people, I don't have the right to speak on who my daughter uses the restroom with. I don't have the right to speak on who my daughter plays sports with. And also, I don't have the right to speak on the age of consent, which inevitably gets changed as soon as you start giving kids the right to have trans operations. I don't have a right, though, because I'm not transgender, and me speaking up for the young girls and my daughter and other women in my life is not about me defending them and caring for them. It somehow is me being transphobic, homophobic, or having some sort of hate for somebody else. That's the type of divisive, manipulative stuff that has me responding right now, because I don't like being bullied, and there's a lot of people that don't. And beyond being bullied, because the more relevant thing is the children. You know, some of us have gone through this for years, and we've felt silenced and bullied for a long, long time. And like we couldn't speak without being mislabeled or losing our jobs or whatever else for a long, long time. But the bottom line is when these kids' rights is being impacted. That's the bottom line. For me, I have no choice but to say something and speak, because those kids ain't going to be in jeopardy. And people can sauce it over and make it seem like it's smaller than what it is. But when you start messing with the age of consent in a world where pedophilia is alive and kicking, that's a dangerous thing. And I, for one, don't stand for it. And I hope there's an army of parents and human people just like me who are not going to stand for children in jeopardy.
these people want to not only teach your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, your young children about sex and sexuality, but now they want to give the child the authority to decide what gender they want to be, even having surgery.
Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught, you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor. What I'm alarmed at is that you're not willing to say absolutely minors shouldn't be making decisions to amputate their breast or to amputate their genitalia. For most of our history, we believe that minors don't have full rights and the parents need to be involved. So I'm alarmed that you won't say with certainty that minors should not have the ability to make the decision to take hormones that will affect them for the rest of their life. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Do you understand where this is headed?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field, and if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff about the standards of care and the complexity of this field.
Let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER. But you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off-label. Not alarmed that these hormones are being used off-label. There's no long-term studies.
To have your child be able to decide whether or not they want their genitals. Do you know how many people commit suicide after they've removed their genitalia? Do they tell you this? Do they tell you what these people go through after they alter their sex? And you're not really altering your sex, you're just removing your genitals. You're not altering anything. But do they tell you the negative effects of these things? Of course they don't.
We don't know what happens to them. We do know that there are dozens and dozens of people who've been through this who regret that this happened and a permanent change happened to them. And, you know, if you've ever been around children, 14-year-olds can't make this decision. In the gender dysphoria clinic in England, 10% of the kids are between the ages of 3 and 10. We should be outraged that someone's talking to a 3-year-old about changing their sex. I can't vote for you if you can't make a decision.
Thank you so much, Senator Paul. Senator Levine, thank you for answering the question.
They are, even as we speak, teaching pedophilia to children as just another option for sexual orientation. Give us the story.
You know, this concerned mother asked the assistant superintendent of curricula in the Brea Olinda School District in California why they were teaching children pedophilia and normalizing anal sex. And you would expect the administrator, the assistant superintendent, to say, oh my goodness, that's horrible. Where did you get such an idea? We would never do something like that. But instead, what she says is, well, you know, this is a sexual orientation that has occurred, and so it's, quote, really important to teach the children about this, and they are.
Answer me why you're teaching pedophilia in school to ninth graders.
Teaching what?
Pedophilia, pederasty, right here.
I've explained to you that this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history.
This is not about something occurred and therefore we have to teach it. I mean, if that was the case, we'd be teaching all kinds of things. What it is about is normalizing every type of perversion. And I want people to realize here the implications of this. This is more than just confusing and perverting and sexualizing the children. Under California law, and this is the case in about half of the states now, and they're working on it at the federal law with the Equality Act, discrimination based on sexual orientation is illegal. So if pedophilia is a sexual orientation, do public schools now need to hire pedophiles so that we don't discriminate on their sexual orientation? Do churches need to hire pedophiles so that they don't discriminate based on sexual orientation to run their children's ministries?
We've seen it, haven't we, Alex? That at American public libraries and in public schools, we're inviting transvestites to come to read to our kindergartners who actually have records, twice it happened in Houston, for having molested kids in the past.
You know, this was the inevitable result of this, right? And now in California's fake history textbooks, they're praising this LGBT superhero, Harvey Milk, for being, the first elected openly homosexual activist. It turns out that guy also had a history of raping underage boys, and it is rape, right? The children cannot consent. And some of them went on to kill themselves, and yet they've made him into a superhero in California's textbooks as part of this new law that mandates the positive presentation of homosexuals and their alleged contributions to history.
What they're going to have to do if they continue this, if this goes unchallenged, is they're going to have to teach children that to oppose the sexual advances of adults simply because they're adults is now a kind of bigotry and orientation phobia. That's the next logical thing, to convince kids that if they're not considering sex with older people, then they're being bigots. That's the only way.
So I got a video from a concerned parent out in California of what happened at this school board meeting. And, the parents had gotten wind of the fact that they were teaching the children about pederasty, that they were teaching the children about how, people thousands of years ago, I guess, men used to rape boys. And they didn't quite portray it in those terms. There's, the men would take for themselves a boy and, such and such. And it was mentioned in the Iliad and things like this. And this was in a presentation about sexual orientation and LGBTQI, whatever stuff, history. And so one of the moms at the event said, hey, why are you teaching our children pedophilia? Why are you normalizing anal sex? And the response from Assistant Superintendent Carrie Torres was absolutely shocking, and we'll play the video now.
Answer me why you're teaching pedophilia in school to ninth graders.
Teaching what?
Pedophilia, pederasty, right here.
I've explained to you that this is done because we are talking about historical perspectives of how gender relations and different types of sexual orientations have existed in history.
Heard it from her, not from me, and that is where Snopes comes in. They basically take ridiculous Democrat claims and twist themselves into pretzels trying to justify how it could possibly be remotely true, and then they take any claims that expose perversion or that make points for Republicans or conservatives and label them false. And so they did that same thing with this article here. They basically documented in this article that what we reported was exactly true, 100% accurate, and then they said it's false. Why it's false? Well, you'll have to read the garbage that they put out. But you're right, Duke. It's important for people to realize that Snopes is literally founded and run by perverts, right? The main founder got busted, according to the Daily Mail, swindling $100,000 from donors to spend on prostitutes. That's who we're dealing with. They falsely labeled our report false, even though they included the video proving it was true. And they also, so that's the story. It's the third time Snopes has falsely said something we reported was false, and once again, we debunked them. But even worse than that, Duke, this guy who reviewed it, Dan McGill, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, he actually went on to defend the teaching of child rape. He explained that by modern standards, we think that this is bad, and men shouldn't rape children and things like that. But in ancient Greece, it was perfectly normal and widely accepted. As he went on to say that it's perfectly relevant in instruction about LGBTQI whatever history to teach the children about child rape. And so you have Snopes here, run by perverts, defending the most abominable form of perversion possible.